5:18 in the morning on a Wellness Wednesday. Are you drinking your water? Are you stretching? Are you reading something that inspires and uplifts you? Let's do all the things we need to do to feel our best and our strongest. Man, these last couple weeks getting across this finish line of this election, more than a notion. And somebody who's doing more than her fair share of the work. She's a professor, former chair of the Pan-African Studies Department at Cal State LA. She is a PhD and MA and a BA from Howard University, PhD from Cal State, from USC, excuse me. And she's also the lead organizer, co-founder of Black Lives Matter LA. Dr. Melina Abdullah, good morning.
Good morning, Sister Dominique. How are you?
The amount of work that you're doing right now, I keep you in my prayers.
I appreciate that, and I keep you in mine as well.
I do appreciate that, too. So Black Lives Matter LA put out an election, I don't know what you call it, sample ballot?
Our first voter guide. We put out our first ever voter guide.
Yes.
On the ballot propositions and measures only. We don't endorse candidates, but we did. People had a lot of questions about the propositions that are, on the ballot. And I think that it's really important. We think that it's really important that people are informed and that they vote and feel empowered to vote all the way down the ballot. Some of these propositions are going to be just as important as who sits in the Oval Office. They're going to affect us on a daily basis. And so it's really important that we know how to vote on these measures and propositions.
Yeah, I get a lot of calls from people asking, where is the cheat sheet? Where can I figure out how to vote on what? And some of this stuff is really actually confusing, and some of it intentionally so. And so, that's up at blmla.org. And so if you guys want to see it, go to blmla.org. But let's talk about some of these things today. I feel like we haven't spent much time on this show talking, or not as much as I would like, talking about Measure J, which is only for LA County. So if you live, in Pomona, Santa Clarita, like our candidates that called in, you may or may not be able to vote for this, depending on whether you're in LA County proper. But talk about Measure J.
Sure. Well, this is one of the ones that will affect our lives on a daily basis. So Measure J, J for Justice, is about making sure that we have the dollars that we need invested in the things that actually build safe communities. So Measure J will take at least $500 million every single year and invest it in things like housing, like healthcare, like good jobs. It cannot be used. Those dollars cannot be used for things like jails and LA County sheriffs. And so it will allocate dollars for the things that we need. If you look around, we see an expansion of the unhoused community, even though Angelenos, residents of the county, have repeatedly said, we want to make sure that our county resources go to funding housing for our people. This is one of the ways that we can do it. And so it's not only something that we support, we say yes on J, but it's one of our priority measures. This is one of the things. It's a transformational in the way that it approaches things. It won't fix everything, but it will be a significant step forward in making sure we have resources in our county.
Yeah, to me, Measure J, my interpretation of it is that this is one of the things that comes out of, the Reform LA Jails legislation. One of the things that comes out of the work that Black Lives Matter LA and nationally has been doing as far as reimagining, our priorities in terms of what we're spending our money on and making that into a policy rather than just a sign.
Yes, absolutely. It does come out of our work, our reimagining work. This is one of the ways that's one of the things that's said, that's what Measure J is. It's our Reimagine LA measure. And so if you believe in investing in the things that our residents actually need, then we have to vote yes on J. And we know that one indicator of how it's moving forward and that it's the people behind it is that on the other side, the only opposition to Measure J is ALADS, the Sheriff's Association. The sheriffs don't want Measure J to pass because they want to make sure that they are over-policing our communities. They want to make sure that there's more jails, not less. And so they're spending millions of dollars to try to defeat Measure J. But every Monday night, we do phone banking. We walk precincts. We call everybody we know. We engage in kind of this people push to get Measure J over the finish line. We can't match their money, but we can overpower them with people power.
The people push is so important. It really is. In Measure J, I've gotten all this mail, right? All the election mail and the election phone calls. Suddenly, Barack Obama is leaving you messages, and suddenly your mailbox is full of all these expensive, colorful mailers. And it seems like Measure J is one where they're pulling out the scare tactics and trying to say that this is somehow defunding the police, when in reality, my interpretation and what I'm able to read, we're talking about 10% of revenues. We're talking about shifting priorities. We're not talking about anything that would fundamentally change the structure, whether you believe we should or shouldn't. That's not what Measure J does.
No, it's not what Measure J does, but it does do. So, I'm very clear, and Black Lives Matter is very clear, that we have to fundamentally change things, not just tinker around the edges of systems like policing and jails and prisons. We have to fundamentally be willing as a community to look at what brings safety. And, I've said, this is my scholar hat kind of, but there is no Black person on the face of the earth who feels safer when police pull up behind us, right? We don't feel safer. That doesn't bring safety. But what does bring safety is when we see clean and safe communities, when people have what they need, when, there aren't tents under every single overpass, right? And so we want to make sure that this is the kind of community that we are building in Los Angeles County. That's what reimagining public safety is about. Reimagining public safety is about remembering that when people have what they need, that we meet this question of safety on the front end rather on the back end. And I think about, people like Frederick Williams, his life was just stolen by LA County sheriffs on Friday night. And what would have happened had we not had police or sheriff's deputies patrolling and kind of targeting young Black men in Mona Park, and instead had resources for people like Fred who needed resources after returning home, right? And this is what Measure J will do. So we want to vote yes on Measure J so that we flood our community with resources rather than, continuing to only spend on jails and sheriffs. But like you said, this is not specifically a defund the police measure. This is about the city's discretionary resources and saying that we need to invest those resources on the front end.
Right. It's about priorities. I mean, I think that I understand what you're saying about tinkering around the edges. Sometimes what it's like the old lipstick on a pig saying. But the thing about it is there are small changes that lead to other changes. And sometimes, with California or LA County, we set the tone and we set off a domino effect with something like Measure J, where you can end up, really impacting policy on a widespread level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, of course, this is a first step. This is not the last step, but it's a very meaningful step. So as we go to the polls between now and November 3rd, we want to be well-informed and enthusiastic about voting for Measure J. And as we said, this is a people's measure. So we need all the people to be involved in not only voting for it, but getting it passed. Talk with your neighbors, talk with your friends, talk with your family about why Measure J is so important and get them to vote yes on J as well.
So to be clear, if you're voting yes on Measure J, as I am, as the members of Black Lives Matter LA are doing, you want to see investment in health, housing, and jobs as opposed to just jails. It's shifting how we spend our money a little bit in it as it pertains to 10% of existing locally controlled revenues.
Absolutely. It's at least $500 million for housing, health care, jobs, those sorts of measures that we can all agree we need in the county of Los Angeles.
That's a little bit of change right there. We're talking about jails. There's a couple of things on the ballot this time that impact criminal justice. Measure J is one. Proposition 20 is another one. And I don't think, there's so many important things on the ballot. I don't think maybe we've spent enough time on Prop 20 either. You have a no on Prop 20. I have a no on Prop 20. But this is another one where people can try to confuse you and make it seem like they're improving things with Prop 20. When in fact these are steps backwards for criminal justice reform, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple of measures on the ballot that actually are not moved forward but disguise themselves as meaningful reform. And so it's important that even though we're recognizing that, this system is broken, right, that we not fall for measures that actually don't move us forward, right, measures that are worse than what we have. So when we look at Prop 20, that's one of those measures that it doesn't, it's not meaningful reform, even though it says it's meaningful reform, right? It'll roll back criminal justice reform. It wastes money. We know we don't have money to waste. And also, those dollars can go into the things that we know don't keep us safe, into things like prisons and incarceration. Prop 20 is basically feeds the system of mass incarceration. So we don't want our people to be fooled. So it's a no on 20.
I think 20 actually makes me irritated because we already voted on 3 different separate measures that make it, where certain offenses can be converted to misdemeanors, where certain offenses can be expunged from your record. You know what I mean? And these are reforms that the voters have already passed. Now here they come sneaking back around with Prop 20, trying to undo what we already did to try to start fixing our justice system and the inequities in it. The other thing I hate about Prop 20 is it putting DNA in a state database for a misdemeanor. I mean, I know some of them are shady misdemeanors, but anytime you're taking my DNA and putting it in a database, I need to be, I never want that, but I need to be 100% sure that this is something, that's justifying that. And I just don't think, allowing that for misdemeanors is something we want to do.
Right. And I don't want to go too far down that road, but I want to be clear that there are many of us who are arrested for misdemeanors for things like protesting. That DNA is collected at the time of arrest. And that means it opens up Black people, especially who are targeted for arrest, to have our DNA put in this mass database and used to continue to feed a system, a mass incarceration system. And so, again, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but there is, I often say I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy realist. I think it's kind of part of a huge problem when you say you're going to collect and catalog the DNA of our people. At the time of arrest, there's very few Black people who are not at some point targeted by police. And if you say misdemeanors, then that means virtually anybody who's arrested will have their DNA collected.
Right, and that's also, guilty. Instead of innocent until proven guilty, it's the other way around, because you're taking my DNA. Are you going to give it back to me if I'm not convicted? I don't think so. When we get back, we'll talk about Proposition 25. It's Radio Free 102.3 KJL. Continuing our conversation with Dr. Melina Abdullah. She is co-founder of Black Lives Matter LA, professor at Cal State LA. Man, I feel like we could totally get distracted by some of the news headlines that I just read and do a whole other show. I do want to focus on your, voter guide, but is there anything that you would like to say about either of those last two stories, about the lawsuit against the Lacey's or, the killing of Williams? Because sometimes when I read these stories, I'm editing the headlines as I go, just because the way they write them many times is very biased. I'm just wondering if you want to add on to either of those.
Yeah, well, we know that Jackie Lacey is on the ballot, and there are 622 people who've been killed by police since she took office, and she's refused to prosecute any of those officers or deputies. And that's one of the reasons why we have to vote her out. One of the things that's come up is that in addition to the 622 folks who've been killed in this county under her watch, she's also just kind of bred this culture of reckless abandon, and where even her husband, as we were attempting to have a meeting with her, pointed a gun at me and two other Black Lives Matter organizers, and she completely gave excuses for why he did that, and tried to cast herself as the victim. And so I think it speaks to her character. Beyond the 622 folks, there's a lot more. There are many other reasons why we have to vote Jackie Lacey out of office. So as we're talking about voting, I'm taking the personal position that Jackie Lacey must go. And for 3 years, Black Lives Matter has been in front of her office saying Jackie Lacey must go. You can join us. People can join us today. We're going to actually be there a little bit early with the family of Frederick Williams, saying that Jackie Lacey must go, but also remembering that building is the Hall of Justice. We call it the Hall of Injustice, which houses not only the district attorney's office, but also the sheriff's department, which has been on a rampage, killing more than 11 people since the murder of George Floyd, most recently stealing the life of Frederick Williams. And so we'll be there with the family of Frederick Williams, with the family of Dejan Kazee, with the family of Ryan Twyman, and we'll be saying not only must Jackie Lacey go, but we need an independent investigation, a patterns and practice investigation of the sheriff's department. So there'll be a press conference beginning at 10:30 at 211 West Temple. So anybody who thinks that the sheriff is out of control, then please join us there today at 2:30, 211 West Temple, and then you can stay for the protest of Jackie Lacey. And then finally, after we chant Jackie Lacey must go, we're telling everybody, bring your ballot with you, because we're going to march to the polls, really march to the ballot drop box, because we organize, we believe in Kwame Ture, organize, and we also vote. And so we're going to walk to the ballot drop box and drop our ballots in the mail. We did that for the first time last week and had a whole bunch of 18-year-olds who voted for the first time.
Nice.
So that was really, really moving, experiencing that.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see that the early voting numbers coming back up. Black people are setting records with our voting participation, and young people also, lots of young people. So I thought maybe we could talk a little about 25 and then maybe just speed through the rest of these, since time seems to go by so fast when you're on the radio. Prop 25 is about ending the cash bail system, and California already voted to do that. Now it's back on the ballot. I'm going to say I had planned to vote yes on this. And one of the reasons that I'm now like, maybe I won't, is because of your voter guide. To me, getting rid of cash bail is a great idea. The fact that, that money, basically we have debtor's prison. Money keeps people in jail. I think that needs to go. And, I understand, okay, so the algorithm you say is racist, but couldn't we fix that? Couldn't we pass this thing and then fix the risk assessment measures just to make some progress here?
I know that it feels like we could fix it. I know that it feels like anything would be better than cash bail. But what happens with Proposition 25 is it relies on a system of algorithms, and there's no recourse. And so right now, when we don't want the cash bail system. However, this is not the right fix. Right now, there's at least an opportunity for people through different mechanisms to try to get their bail reduced, to try to get their bail thrown out. But with this system, with the system that's proposed by Prop 25, there's no mechanism, there's no recourse. And so we know that it would be Black people locked up. If you look at the way the algorithm works, it's based on where you live. Where you live becomes a tool to lock folks up. We know that we live in the zip codes and neighborhoods that they think make us more likely to reoffend. And so it would be likely that Black folks, brown folks, poor folks don't have any opportunity to be released pre-trial. And so we're saying no on 25, not because we believe in a cash bail system, but because we want the right fix. We don't want to replace a terrible system with an even more terrible system.
Yeah, understood. I mean, I was just talking with these defense attorneys, and they're saying people are putting up grandma's house, and then they still have to pay that 10% to the bail bonds. People are losing homes. People are pleading out because they want to get out of jail, and pay that by hook or by crook, and it sets off just a spiral. I mean, if I go to jail for protesting, hopefully somebody's going to bail me out. But a lot of people don't have that anyone anywhere in their family or their radio world that's going to get them out of jail, So I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I feel torn about it.
When you take the human factor out of determining whether people are released pretrial, again, this is, folks who've been arrested and are being held, but haven't been convicted of a crime, right? When you take the human factor out of it and say that it's only a computer algorithm that determines it, there's no opportunity to even advocate for you. Even if, right now, when you're arrested, and I can say this because I've been arrested many times, right, on protest charges, that inside the jail, there's a number that you can call to ask for your bail to be reduced, right? Once you're arrested, you also have an opportunity to engage your community members and get them to advocate for you. And maybe it is the cash bail system is a terrible system where we are often not only putting up grandma's house, but we're also bonding out. You never get those dollars back when you pay a bond, right? It's a terrible system. But worse than that system would be that you can't get out at all. And that's what Prop 25 is that a computer algorithm would determine whether you're able to get out at all. I'd rather be able to kind of engage with a human being and have a computer algorithm that already has been proven to be racist be the one that determines. The best person to look at is Pete White, who talks brilliantly about why we have to vote no on 25. So anybody who's torn, I encourage them to go to Los Angeles Community Action Network founder Pete White's social media posts, who talks brilliantly about Prop 25. But for me, it's a no on 25. For Black Lives Matter, it's a no on 25.
Got it. And maybe we can get Pete in here. Okay, so really quick, Proposition 15, you're saying yes on 15. 15 is the one about property taxes. A lot of people are scared because of these lying commercials that it will make their property tax go up.
Right. This is for commercial property owners whose property is worth, I think it's over $3 million. There's some cap on the amount that it has to be valued at. This is not your home. This is not even your investment property. If you own a duplex, it's not going to raise your taxes. What we're talking about is McDonald's, who continues to pay. McDonald's is the largest real estate holder in the state, right? It's about McDonald's who's still paying property tax that's worth from the 1970s value of that property. Yeah. We need McDonald's to pay their fair share. We need Walmart to pay their fair share. I'm sorry?
No, I was just agreeing with you that I'm a strong yes on 15. Yeah. Proposition 16, affirmative action. I'm glad to see it's surging. This is what you call people power. Prop 16, you have a yes here. You want to say anything about that?
Well, there's no better advocate for Prop 16 than you. We stand alongside you and say yes on 16. As we talk about racial equity, we need to think about the way in which the state over the last 25 years has really embedded racial oppression by undoing affirmative action. Proposition 16 will restore racial equity in the state of California. It'll allow us to look at many different measures, including race, as we provide opportunities. And I just want to speak personally as a college professor and looking at what's happening with Black students in the state of California. The Cal State system where I teach is down to a 3.4% Black student enrollment number. They're using mechanisms like, the anti-affirmative action legislation to lock Black students out of universities. So universities like the Cal State system has a service area requirement. So people who live around the university have priority. Well, unfortunately, most Black people don't live around a Cal State, and they don't live around their service area